bring in Jay Bilas, ESPN's college basketball analyst. Jay, walk us through yesterday. What did it mean to you? What's it mean to the sports world of the NCAA?
Well, it was a profound error in judgment on the part of the NCAA to petition the Supreme Court to hear that case, because the lower court ruling in the Ninth Circuit was actually pretty good for the NCAA, and it preserved amateurism and what the NCAA considers its right to limit players' compensation from schools and from third parties. So that was the first thing that hit me, was how stupid and incompetent it was for the NCAA to take that step. But really, Dan, what this was about was, the Supreme Court took this case because there was a circuit split among federal courts with regard to how these cases were being decided. And so what the NCAA really lost was its deference from the courts and the presumption that their rules were pro-competitive. And so now every case, they're going to have to go through this rule, what's called a rule of reason test, which means they're going to have to show and prove that there are pro-competitive aspects to what they're doing and not anti-competitive. And like what you just read from Justice Kavanaugh's concurring opinion, it's going to be really hard for them to do that. I don't think they're going to be able to. And so that was a huge mistake they made. I think what this does now is it opens the door for further litigation that's not just going to be on, laptops. It's not going to be about laptops and tutors and internships. It's going to be about name, image, and likeness, and it's going to be about contracting with the university for pay. And I don't think there's any way that the NCAA is going to prevail on these cases going forward. And the only hope they have is going on both knees to Congress and saying, please give us an antitrust exemption, which you've given to no other multi-billion-dollar business in the country. Please give it to us, because we've proven that we can do this right. And I don't think they're going to get that either.
What if the NCAA hired you as a lawyer and said, make a case for us? What would you lead with?
Well, I would have said, leave it alone. We won substantial parts of the case in the Ninth Circuit. We lost a few elements of it, but overall this was good. Overall, the O'Bannon ruling was good because it continues to allow the NCAA to place cartel restrictions on athletes, like you just said, that would be allowed in no other business. The courts are still allowing us to violate federal antitrust law, and we are a serial federal antitrust law violator. So let's take what we got and keep quiet and lay in the weeds and keep doing what we're doing. That's what I would have told them.
What if they hired you today?
I'd say you're done now. It's over now. You have no shot. You did something so incompetent that you're not going to be able to survive this now. So now you really have to turn your attention toward Congress. And really, Dan, so this is going to end. This ruling, the Alston ruling by the Supreme Court, is going to essentially stop the NCAA's name, image, and likeness legislation in its tracks. They're not going to pass anything now. Now, I said it back in October of 2019. They're not going to do anything. The NCAA is going to say they're going to do it, but they're not going to do anything because they don't want to. I think that was proven right. But now what they're going to do is that now they're going to say, if we pass anything that's restrictive, we're going to be right back in front of a court, and we're going to lose. So they're probably just going to say, all right, everybody can do what their state allows, and they'll just beg Congress for a federal law that's going to preempt all these state laws, give them one national standard, and hopefully, from their perspective, give them the continuing right to limit athletes in a way that the Supreme Court just said, that Justice Kavanaugh just said would be illegal in any other business in America. So that's now their stance is, let us do something that the highest court in the land says is illegal for any other business. Can you imagine being in that position now? And the incompetence of that decision making, I just cannot imagine.
But I wonder, with these states that are going to have a head start with some of the other states in recruiting, Texas, now you bring in recruits, you can pay them. Are schools going to have an image advisor on staff? How do you get paid off of this? You have to do it legally. Uh, I don't know. It just feels like some states are going to have a little bit of an opportunity here where the other states are not. Do you see that?
Maybe, but so what? That's what competition looks like. Like we've got differing, the funny part of this, Dan, is because we've had this system for so long, people are going, well, how's this going to work? What's going to happen? It's so complicated. How are we going to deal? Not that you're doing this, but that's, it's like breathless. And we've had drastic change on the revenue side since 1984, and nobody asks how it's going to work. Like nobody asks, well, how are we going to pay all our coaches? Like, do we pay all the coaches the same? What do we give Coach K the same as we give John Shire? Like, what do we do? What do we do? It's really not that big of a deal, and it'll work just fine. We have differing tax laws in every state, differing state tax laws. So in Florida and Texas and Nevada, there's no state tax at all. And you don't hear anybody saying, wait a minute, that's not fair. That's not fair. Because now they can offer coaches more compensation. All the best coaches are just going to coach in states with no income tax. It's all fine. It may be a factor. It's not that big of a deal. And name, image, and likeness, if one state differs from another, it'll all work itself out. Other states may increase what they allow. We'll be fine. We don't need a national standard with regard to speed limits. We don't need it with regard to taxation, and we don't need it with regard to name, image, and likeness. It is just the NCAA saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. We have to be allowed to do this, or it's going to be a problem. But if you looked at it on the revenue generation side, like this college sports have changed incredibly in the last 40 years since the last time the NCAA was before the Supreme Court and lost as an antitrust violator. But nobody's had a problem with it, and the business has thrived, and it'll thrive now. It is not that big of a deal that the players are on the way to getting their civil right to be treated just like everyone else, including every other student. And one last thing, Dan, there are far more non-athlete students that get scholarships than athletes. So when we start trying to shoehorn this whole thing into saying, well, the scholarship is paying, well, then what is a scholarship to a non-athlete? And why aren't they restricted in what they can earn or accept while they're in school? The only person that's restricted in any way is an athlete. And I've happened to think it's profoundly wrong and has been forever. And the Supreme Court just said it's profoundly wrong. And every court in the land now has heard that. And the NCAA is not going to get protection from the courts anymore. That part of it is over. And it's over because of their incompetence.
And the timing of this, because the NCAA might be voting on that 12-team playoff today, which is going to generate even more revenue. And so that juxtaposition of, these athletes saying, hey, can we get paid? Hey, hold off, guys. We gotta vote on this 12-team playoff here.
Funny how that's not too complicated. I mean, remember when everybody said, well, we can't have a playoff because of the bowl system, it's impossible.
Yeah.
And they turned around, did it, made $1 billion the first year. The revenue generation side, nothing's too complicated. They can figure it all out. And so now we're asking these ridiculously stupid questions about, well, how are we going to pay everybody? Do we pay everybody the same? How do we value it? The school has value. Like if you applied that to coaches, what we say about players, you go, well, how are we going to figure this out? Do we pay all the coaches the same? What are we going to do? Do we pay the head coach the same as an assistant coach? What about the coach's secretary that works just as hard? We don't do that. These schools know exactly whom to recruit and exactly whom to put in the game when they want to win. They know whom to pay and how much. It is not this hard. And it's in the NCAA's interest to make it seem complicated. It's not complicated. It's just business. And they'll figure it out just fine. We had conference realignment, and nobody stopped watching. We have when I played for Coach K back in the 80s, he probably made $50,000-$60,000. He's making $10 million now. Nobody stopped watching. We flew commercial and rode on buses. They fly private now. Nobody stopped watching. And they're not going to stop watching if a player can do it. If Trevor Lawrence can do a commercial, they're not going to stop watching. So this is all nonsense, and the Supreme Court called it out as such.
What happens next?
Well, I think what happens next is the NCAA puts the brakes on their name, image, and likeness legislation, and they basically just say, Every school can do now what their state law allows them to do, and it won't run afoul of NCAA bylaws. And they'll see what happens, and then they'll go to Congress and they'll keep lobbying Congress to say, please, please, please bail us out of this situation that we created and give us rules, even though we say we're just like you and we're a representative government. Pass a law so that we don't have to do anything anymore. And I think it's going to be really hard for Congress to give them a safe harbor in antitrust law when the Supreme Court just said, no, you're a multi-billion-dollar business. You know what the rest of us have to do? We have to navigate our business lives without violating federal antitrust law. We don't get Congress telling us, no, go ahead, you can do that. None of our media companies don't have to do. It's amazing how we do that. It's amazing how you and I can get paid, and our companies don't have to go to Congress and say, please, please give us a law that gives us safe harbor for all this. I don't think the NCAA is going to get that. They're asking for extraordinary relief here. They may get a law that sort of allows the same thing for every state, but it's going to be way more than the NCAA wants. And I'm flabbergasted that of the incompetence of NCAA leadership that they drove us into this ditch intentionally and through inaction all these years, and didn't change while they were changing the game themselves. They didn't change the game in this area, knowing that it was going to be a problem. And I'm still, my jaw's on the floor at how stupid NCAA leadership has been.
If we created a sports Supreme Court, are you willing to be justice?
Do I get a cool robe?
Yes, I'll give you a robe.
Yeah, man. I would be happy to be Chief Justice.
Thank you, Jay. We appreciate your time as always.
Always a pleasure to talk about legal issues with you, Dan. And what's better than a good Supreme Court opinion to generate a lot of discussion?
Yes. Thank you, Jay. That's Jay Bilas from the Mothership, college basketball analyst.